Hello and welcome. This is James from the DSO Imager channel. Tonight I'm going to show you my processing workflow for my latest image, the Lobster Claw nebula. Now the Lobster Claw is a fairly popular target. It lies between Cepheus and Cassiopeia. It's often shot in a wider field and it's right next to the Bubble Nebula, so you usually see those two together. I shot this using my 115mm refractor, that's the AT115 EDT, and I used the ZWO ASI 1600 mono. So with that combination, it frames up the Lobster Claw really well, but there's no room for anything else. Now let's take a look at the data that I have here, the stack subs. Total integration for this target was 53 hours exactly. It's pretty evenly across all the filters. S2 has the most though, a little bit, a couple hours more than the other ones. That said, most of this S2 data was captured with a bright moon out. So when I switched over to this target, the moon was actually waxing. And so I gathered data all the way through the full moon. And once the moon got down to, I don't know, around 60% or so, I switched over to hydrogen alpha. All the O3 was captured with almost little or no moon. Alright, so, yep, here's the S3. Excuse me, S3. S2, the sulfur. And let's take a look at that HA. Here we go. HA strong as usual. Got a lot of good detail in here. And the O3. So this target is rich in O3. If you like O3, this is a good target to go after. Now I am using out-of-date flat frames, and you're seeing some of that over here. I think actually what's going on here is I'm using 1¼ inch mounted filters, and that's just barely big enough for these 4/3 sensors. And so I think that's what's happening over here. A fresh set of flats should have taken care of this, but I'm in a little bit of a quandary and unwilling to shoot flats. So here's the current deal with flats. Normally I have one of those tracing tablets, and I take the flats inside with the tablet at a good spot. But we're having such a amazing stretch of clear nights. It's pushing 2 months worth of clear night every night, that I'm unwilling to unmount the rigs and bring them inside to try and do flats. It just seems like anytime I mess with the rigs, it's inviting an opportunity for something to go wrong. So under these circumstances, I would just do sky flats. I've done sky flats in the past, and they work. You got to kind of catch it with the right light near the dusk. The problem is that it's been so hot down here in central Texas, and this heat, this high heat, is the reason we have all these clear nights. We've got this a hot dome of high pressure that's just been resting over the state. So it's drying us out. We've had no rain. We're in a severe drought, but it's been giving the clear skies. But anyway, it's too hot for me to turn on the mini computers and turn on the camera. The camera will have no chance to get down to the target temperature, and so sky flats is just not possible. So I've just been making do without the flats. The flats I used on this stack date way back from March of this year, so they're really out of date. But with narrowband, I find that you often can get rid of, you can get away with not using fresh flats. And something like this over here, there's not a whole lot of detail in this region anyway. And so I just cleaned this up using Clone Stamp. And I'll show you guys how I did that really quick. So basically what I did is here. So you can see I used Star Exterminator to remove the stars. And then I just used Clone Stamp to clean out those dark corners. There you go. All right, and then after that, I just added the stars back, and that gave you this. So, you know, I mean, fortunately, in this channel, there was nothing in here, so Clone Stamp worked. If I had tried to do this with like HA, we might have had a problem, and maybe I would have gone through the effort to bring the scope indoors and shoot fresh flats. But anyway, with this, I was able to get away with it. Alright, so I put them all together, and this is what we end up with. Now, I wanted to run dynamic background extraction, and it can be tricky to know where to put your reference points when you have so many stars, right? And it's hard to discern where the nebula is and where it isn't. I mean, if this area is so thick and rich that if I were to expose, I don't know, 200 hours worth, I probably wouldn't have any kind of background really at all. The only options would be to use like the dark dust lanes. So to assist in finding out where I should put the reference points, I'll remove the stars on the combined image. So now you can see, right? Like I would stick a reference point maybe in here, not in here. And so I create a saved process, basically this down here. And yeah, see where I have these reference points here? So I designed this location of reference points basically practicing on a starless image. And then once you nail down the position, oh, and these are testing different results. Right, I think I went with this one here. So then I used this option, applied it to the image with the star, and then you make another adjustment just to move the reference point off. And I'll demonstrate that really quick here. Probably easier to show it than try to speak it. So incidentally, these are usually the settings that I use. Alright, so if I just drop a square anywhere in here, you know, let's make this bigger for demonstration purposes. Okay, so I just drop a star here. Well, you look into this window, because you obviously want this reference point to be in a spot where there's no stars, and you can see there's some stars here. So I take the initial saved dynamic background extraction process with the reference points on the starless image. I load it up in here, and then I check each of the reference points to see if there's any stars. And it's just, alright, so I know this is a good spot, right? So I just move it around a little bit until we see no stars over here. And then I save that one, right? And we just drag that off to save it. And then that's how I use that. Alright, clear as mud. I hope. So anyway, so after running dynamic background extraction twice, I did it first with division and then second time with subtraction, I ended up with this. Next step was to run Blur Exterminator, and that gives us this. So Blur Exterminator does its magic on the stars and tightens up some of the details. Right, because I mean this is already looking really good. And then after that, we remove the stars, this time for good, and I save the stars, and this is our starting point. So I do make another clone, and at this point, this is where we're going to start. Now, the first thing, we're still linear, right? We haven't stretched anything, And for the initial stretch on narrow band, I often just use the STF tool to do an unlinked stretch and then apply that stretch using the histogram. Alright, so let's start clicking through this. Alright, so here's our stretch. And now you see a mask applied. And yeah, so what's going on here is that with the stretch, this is a really bright area. I'm not sure what's in here, if there's a planetary nebula in there or what. But if anyone knows, drop the comments down there. I know it's got a designation. It may even be in the NGC catalog. But anyway, I've got a mask in here, so I'm going to pull back on the brightness on that object in there. And that's what you're seeing. Now I'm working on the whole image, and really we're just using curves to increase contrast. And minor tweaks and adjustments as we go. Alright, now you see I'm doing an inverse here. Now the goal of the inverse is to correct the magenta that we're seeing in the image. Let me move some of this stuff around. And I actually stop at this point because I invert, and then I realize that we got some orange, green dots over here. And so what's happening is that there were some really bright stars here, and these are kind of like the background halos left behind by Star Exterminator. Plus we got some purple in here. So I created another clone to work on this separately. Alright, so next step, you see I created a range mask here, and the idea behind this range mask is to go after the faint magenta background, right? Oops. Yeah, so again, if we zoom in, we can see some purple, right? In the darker areas, there's like a purple color cast. And so the way I'm addressing that is I'm using a mask to protect the brighter area, because now I don't want to remove the magenta that's in here. Like, you can't see any in here, but there is magenta signal in here. So if I invert this and apply SCNR to the entire picture, then it's going to damage the color that's in here. And it may not be obvious at first. The result is that this whole thing will look even more yellow than it does now. And it will just be more difficult to pull out extra colors. This is one of the reasons why you see a lot of two-toned SHO or Hubble palette images out there, because folks are deleting the green and the purple, and I mean there's a lot of color spectrum around those two. I'm just wanting to kill it off in the background. So we've got the mask applied, we're inverted, and there I subtracted, and we got it back. So it helped, but notice these two blobs, purple blobs, are still here. And the reason why is that this area was brighter, so these guys were actually protected by that mask. So now you see I've inverted again. We've got a new mask. Let's see. See, so now what I did is I created a mask using the game script and made little circles just to subtract green specifically from this area. So we applied it, we removed it, and invert back. Now you see how the purple has been significantly reduced, but the circles are still there. So I put this mask back on here, and now what I'm going to do is dial back a little bit on curves and saturation. And the idea is just to blend those two in with the background. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's blended in really well. So now if you don't know they're there, you may not notice them here. I did a little bit more of an adjustment there. So you won't really notice this, especially when I put the stars back in. So I think this successfully dealt with it. I mean, if you zoom in, you can see a little bit of ring. I could have maybe done this a little bit cleaner, but I think this was good enough to get the job done. Yeah, now we're doing some more contrast enhancement. Right, I put that mask back on. All right, it's a delicate balance not to let these background areas get too dark. I mean, there is some structure in there. And you know, I'm a glutton for punishment sometimes because I can see faint structure in here, and it always tempts me to get more data. You know, 53 hours wasn't enough. I want to get more. You know, really what I should get is a faster scope, I think. All right, some more contrast work with curves. Notice there's no mask on there. And I mean, this is just playing with curves. All right, we got a mask on there now. You can see that it's really hard to tell. It's probably a red mask that I have on there, so that I can work on this ring, this kind of sulfur ring out here. What I'm trying to do is get some separation on a lot of these narrowband shots of this target. You don't see a lot of distinguishing colors in all these features, right? Like, I want to get this area to stand out. You guys know I like green. I don't want this much green in there, but I definitely want to maintain the green that's in this patch over here and some of the green over there. So that's where these color masks come in. Yeah, and so you can see that's exactly what it is I'm trying to get a little bit more color separation. And what I'm doing is pulling back on green a little bit and increasing red a tiny little bit. You can see increasing saturation a little bit, pulling back on green some more. Got another mask on there. Okay, so focusing on the blue. Yeah, I just want to make it brighter, I think, is what you're seeing there. Because I felt like I wanted more separation between these parts here and the darker background. Alright, so I ended up at this point, and this was pretty much the end of the curves work in pixinsight. Now, what I did at this point is I pulled it into Photoshop. I've really been having fun with that camera raw filter lately in Photoshop, and so I went in there. Unfortunately, I didn't save the sequence in there, but really, when I go into that camera raw filter, the main sliders I'm adjusting is I hit it with dehaze first, then what's the other one called? Hold on. Here, let me load up some random picture in Photoshop. Alright, so here we are in the camera raw filter. So dehaze is the first slider that I hit. You can see the effects that has. And then clarity is what I hit it with. And then I give it a little bit of texture, which seems to improve sharpness a little bit. And then maybe a little bit of contrast. I mean, I try very hard not to get too contrast. I usually don't need to do anything with these because I took care of all this work in pixinsight with the curves. Same thing with exposure, unless sometimes after you get tunnel vision when you're looking at the image for a long time. And sometimes after a day I'll come back and it'll be like, you know what, this whole image looks a little flat or a little dim. Especially with narrowband images, it can be a problem. Not so much with broadband. And so maybe I'll increase exposure here. I mean, I can either increase exposure here, or in pixinsight I can boost curves a little bit, or I can increase I can stretch it just a tiny little bit more with histogram. I mean, there's all different ways to basically do the same thing. But it works pretty well in here. And then I find that instead of boosting saturation, hitting it with some vibrance can often do what I want to do without overcooking the color, right? So look at what happens to the red on this if I increase saturation versus using vibrance, right? Vibrance seems to be a little bit softer or more gentle. So anyway, that's just a brief overview of what I do in Photoshop these days. All right, so after I do that, I come back in here and I work on the stars. Basically, all I'm doing is I'm doing an arc sign stretch initially and then a little bit of a histogram stretch and trying to find the right balance of how bright I want these stars and how many stars I want, because there's more stars in here. If I increase the stretch, we'll see more stars. I mean, you guys saw in the raw stacks before I did any processing that there was a lot of stars there, which made it difficult to use dynamic background extraction. Now lately I've been doing a lot of stars, I've been pulling out a lot of stars, but on this image I felt like with a lot of stars it was obscuring this intricate detail in the nebula too much. So this time around I went with a lighter dose of stars. And the final image, I'll just cut to the chase, is this. You'll notice that this is version 4. So it was around version 2 that I took my my break, my 24-hour break, except it didn't last 24 hours. It was more like a 12-hour break this time around. And then I went back and I tweaked it a little more and ended up with this 4th version. And late, I don't know, Thursday night or whatever is when I started pushing it out. I think I put it on Instagram and it might have been the community tab here on YouTube. So there we go. The first time I ever shot this target with the Hubble palette, and I'm very happy with the way it came out. It's got a really nice balance of colors here. You can't always do this nice mix of blues, greens, reds, yellows, golds. You can't do it on every narrowband target. So I'm thinking some targets, they just don't have the diversity in all the gases to get this really cool combination of colors. Alright, so let me know what you think of this target, and let me know if you guys have ever tried this target before, and if you tried doing Hubble palette, broadband, dual band with one-shot color. Be interested to see. I think it's a popular target, but it doesn't quite get as much attention as some of the other targets that are out there. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and clear skies.